that I can live here after this. There's no way. This is my husband in this environment. I don't want it. I don't want this life.
A $1 million financial crash isn't just a number. It's a slow motion wreck, where every second after the impact feels heavier than the last. And for Elizabeth Potast and Andre Castrovet, that number didn't stay on paper. It allegedly crashed into their bank account, their marriage, and the show that made them famous, all at once. Behind the smiles, matching outfits, and recycled TikTok trends, something enormous was quietly snapping. Not loudly, not with scandalous cheating rumors or public meltdowns, but with absence, emotional, financial, and professional. And then the whisper started. Did Elizabeth secretly walk away from TLC? Did Andre lose not just the money, but control of the narrative? This wasn't supposed to be their story. Remember, these two were sold as one of the strongest couples in the 90-Day Fiancé universe. Controversial but solid. They had made it through immigration hurdles, public judgment, and relentless family drama. But now, insiders say that same stability is crumbling on silent terms. No major public fallout, no TikTok confessions, just stiff smiles, tight-lipped captions, and quietly closed doors. And it all started after what sources claim was a catastrophic set of bad investment decisions, allegedly led by Andre, with Elizabeth either looking the other way or giving her blessing, depending on who you ask. They didn't lose money in a slow, spread-out way. According to those familiar with the situation, it happened fast. Risky trades, volatile markets, and boom, 7 figures allegedly gone. And then came the blame. One minute, they were publicly aligned, a united front. The next, sources say conversations turned cold. Not we'll fix it together, but you did this. These words weren't meant for cameras. They weren't even being said. They were showing up in body language, distance, and attention insiders picked up on long before the fans did. Look closely at their last season's footage. There's a stiffness that didn't used to be there. Conversations that end too quickly. Glances that avoid rather than connect. Even when they try to laugh, there's this discomfort, like the air between them was too full. TLC editors can shape a lot, but energy is harder to mask, especially when it starts affecting production. According to sources close to the set, producers were growing concerned, not just about one-off disagreements, but about the long-term vibe. There were reportedly arguments over content boundaries, requests to cut certain scenes, and growing resistance from both sides. Andre allegedly pushed back against how he was being portrayed. Elizabeth, sources claim, became harder to pin down emotionally, often guarded and selective about what she was willing to discuss. And then, slowly, alarmingly, the couple who used to perform their chaos for millions stopped performing it at all. Their storyline, once filled with explosive family showdowns and passionate reconciliations, turned almost eerily quiet. And when reality stars go silent, people behind the scenes pay close attention. Because silence, especially from two people who built a career on public emotion, is rarely about peace. It's often about fallout control. And if this breakup goes public, insiders say it might trigger a franchise-wide crackdown. Imagine trusting someone with your financial future. Now imagine realizing that someone might have made $1 million gamble and lost. That's the alleged nightmare Andre and Elizabeth found themselves in. According to multiple sources familiar with the situation, Andre went all in on a stock market strategy that wasn't just aggressive, it was borderline reckless. Fast trading, high risk, no backup plan. And when the numbers tanked, they didn't just lose profits. They lost peace. What's messier is the blurred ownership of that decision. Insiders are divided. Some claim Andre took the lead, acting on impulse and ego, convinced he could flip their growing reality TV income into something more sustainable. Others say Elizabeth wasn't just aware, she allegedly supported it. They reportedly discussed the strategy as a couple, talked about building a future outside of TLC. But when it all imploded, the story apparently started to shift. One source described it this way: suddenly it wasn't we anymore, it was you. That kind of pivot cuts deeper than numbers on a screen. It creates ripple effects that don't stop at the bank account. It drills into trust. Inside their home, sources say everything felt colder. Not dramatic, just off. Conversations stopped being about plans and started circling blame. Trust eroded, not in a scream, but a shrug. Think about what happens to a couple when neither fully trusts the other with their future anymore. It's not just about doubting a person's judgment. It creeps into how you see their intentions, their instincts, even their love. The things that held them together, shared goals, mutual grind, their kid, suddenly sat under a spotlight of second-guessing. Followers online noticed strange signals early. Elizabeth's usual updates about finances, house renovations, or business projects quietly disappeared from her feed. Andre, who once beamed with big dream energy, seemed visibly deflated. Whenever money came up in their appearances, there was a new nervousness in the air. You can't fake stability when you've lost the backbone of your lifestyle, especially when your entire public identity is built on being the couple that lasts. There's a moment that hits every couple hard after a financial failure. It's not when the money vanishes. It's when the doubt shows up. Did I really know this person? Were their choices about us, or were they really about control? That's reportedly where Elizabeth landed. While she hasn't made public accusations, those close to her say she felt blindsided, not just by the loss, but by how fast the safety she counted on disappeared. Not just money gone, but security, options, and the flexibility TLC income once covered. And that brings up something millions relate to: what happens after money trauma in a relationship? Can trust survive when one person is blamed or blamed themselves for triggering survival mode? Because trust isn't just about love. It's about protection. And once shattered, emotional safety doesn't just come back with an apology. Especially not in a family watched by millions, where everyone is looking for signs. But the biggest betrayal isn't what one of them did with the money. It's what they stopped doing together. Something changed in their faces. Not the big, dramatic kind of change fans expect from reality TV. No yelling, no slamming doors, no on-camera stormouts. But for viewers who followed Elizabeth and Andre for years, it was in the small things. Clipped answers to basic questions. Long pauses before responding to one another. That strange, performative eye contact that feels more like a practiced move than a real moment. Even when they were saying the right things, their body language was saying everything else. Fans started spotting the difference mid-season. Their usual fire, the passionate back and forth, the intense couple energy that made them a staple on the show, it just wasn't there. Instead, they looked like people playing the roles of themselves. Safe scripts, cautious wording, and less of the chaotic honesty that had once made them compelling. If their early seasons made them feel unpredictable, this one made them feel distant. Detached in a way that didn't read as growth. It read as tension. Off camera, the situation was allegedly even trickier. Sources inside the production team say something felt off months before the edit aired. Crews who had worked with the couple for years began to notice that they were no longer as open, no longer as available emotionally, and far more controlling about what footage was being used. Elizabeth, once described by staff as flexible, started pushing back more, asking supervisors to cut or reframe specific scenes. Not out of vanity, according to insiders, but defensiveness. She reportedly wanted less emotional material exposed, less vulnerability in front of the lens. Andre, meanwhile, allegedly started challenging producers directly. Conversations about scene direction turned into subtle confrontations. One source claimed he thought he was being made to look like the villain, Again, it wasn't just the storylines. He reportedly wanted the tone changed. Fewer clips of him appearing cold, dismissive, aggressive. But producers didn't see a manipulated version. They saw real tension between two people trying to protect themselves mid-collapse. Some insiders believe this behavior wasn't about ego. It was about fear. Andre and Elizabeth were allegedly trying to manage the optics of a marriage already under pressure. When you've made your private life your public brand, unraveling in front of an audience isn't just embarrassing, it's threatening. To money, to image, to control. So, instead of showing real emotion, they started showing restraint. Not intimacy, but strategy. And that gap between who they were and who they looked like they were on TV got bigger every week. What viewers saw was a couple keeping it together. What insiders saw was a couple barely speaking off camera unless the mics were on. Private arguments during filming breaks. Eyes that didn't meet during dinner scenes. A weirdly rehearsed tone when saying, "I love you." One crew member said they were watching a marriage turn into PR, and it made everyone uncomfortable. And then, one morning after filming, word spread through production. Something they all feared had begun. The silence didn't start all at once. At first, it was barely noticeable. Just fewer joint selfies, less playful banter in the captions, no more inside jokes shared with fans. Then, it became obvious. Holiday posts cropped tighter. Milestone moments with their kid looked edited for optics, not memory. And somewhere between the last season and the birthday that only got a heart emoji, Elizabeth and Andre stopped speaking to each other publicly. Not out of privacy, but performance. Because when a brand couple stops oversharing, it's rarely because everything is fine. It's because everything might not be recoverable. Longtime fans felt it first. The ones who followed them from early engagement fights, to baby updates, to real estate dreams. The people who read into everything. When a caption changed. When a story got deleted. When she stopped tagging him. You didn't need to be a detective to feel the cold air coming in. It wasn't the silence itself. It was the mood. A tone shift in every post. Less joy. More obligation. Even their replies to fans began to change. Elizabeth was more filtered. Andre was more absent. The couple who used to clap back in comment sections now left everything hanging. Even the supportive ones. No hearts. No responses. No presence. It started to feel like they weren't just quieter. They weren't together in the same digital space anymore. And that's where the danger is for a couple who built themselves into a content machine. Because the content never lies. If you stop showing affection in a performance-based partnership, people stop seeing love altogether. Insiders say this wasn't about burnout. It was about control. Elizabeth allegedly didn't want their private struggles dissected online. She feared feeding the beast, giving followers more than they already suspected. Andre, reportedly still proud and still angry, didn't want to look like he had lost, emotionally or financially. So, the silence was a calculated middle ground. Say nothing now, hold the line, protect the image. But they weren't protecting each other. That's the thing about public-private emotional shifts. At first, it looks like maturity, like maybe they're finally drawing boundaries. But inside, it's something else. It's survival mode. It's overcorrection. It's trying to shut off public drama when the real conflict is no longer theatrical, it's structural. Nothing brings out blame faster than fear. And sources say that behind their silence, everything turned into transactions. Parenting schedules, statements for PR, quiet warnings to friends not to ask too many questions. And the more they stayed silent online, the more insiders say the conversations behind the scenes turned logistical, not romantic. Elizabeth's family never really disappeared. They were just quieter for a while, watching the storm build from the background. But according to sources close to the situation, the moment that million-dollar loss became undeniable, the whispers started again, and this time, they didn't stay whispers. Concerned texts became warnings. Casual visits felt like interventions, and Elizabeth, once again, found herself in the middle of a decades-old war between her blood and her bond. Andre has always had a complicated relationship with her family. At first, it was culture. Then it became control. Fans watched it get ugly on camera, shouting matches, accusations about laziness, manipulation, power grabs over weddings and finances. And though some of it got polished in editing, most of it didn't need dramatization. It was raw, real, memorable. Back then, Elizabeth picked Andre. Repeatedly. She defended him against her own father's business threats, her siblings' criticism, even social media backlash. She chose her marriage and made it clear she didn't need approval to justify it. But time has a way of shifting who gets the benefit of the doubt, especially when kids enter the picture. And allegedly, when the truth about the money crisis reached her inner circle, those old wounds reopened instantly. Family members who once tried to stay neutral reportedly started to speak up, privately but firmly. Especially about one thing, the future of the children. This wasn't about gossip anymore. It was about protection. And for Elizabeth's loved ones, that meant asking some hard questions. What happens to the kids if TLC checks stop coming? What about school, healthcare, home security, business expenses? Could this marriage still provide safety? Or was it becoming dead weight? Andre, predictably, didn't take those questions as concern. Insiders say he saw it as an ambush, another round of disrespect. Another chapter in the long book of They Never Accepted Me Anyway. It wasn't just the questions, it was who was asking them. People he believes have doubted his manhood, his fatherhood, and his value for years. Sources close to the couple say one conversation in particular, described as calm but loaded, pushed everything to the edge. It wasn't a meltdown. It was worse. It was quiet, surgical. Elizabeth's family, in that moment, allegedly offered help. The kind with strings, a lawyer's number, a career advisor, a contact in finance, all of it positioned as love. But love that didn't include Andre. And now, Elizabeth sat with a decision that wasn't theoretical anymore. She had to choose how much longer she could defend a man who was allegedly spiraling, blaming everyone else, and retreating emotionally while she carried the visible weight. From bills to appearances, from parenting to holding it all together in public. Andre, despite appearances, reportedly began to distance himself, not dramatically, but steadily. Less input, less presence, more silence. And when he did show up, insiders say it was with a kind of rigidity that shut conversations down rather than solved anything. People around her started noticing. Friends, castmates, neighbors. One source said Elizabeth looked exhausted, physically and emotionally, at a recent gathering. Nothing obvious, no outburst. But her smile didn't reach her eyes, and she avoided talking about any plans longer than a week out. She allegedly even dodged questions about filming. That's not like her. At all. And that's when the family concern became pressure. Some urged her to step back, legally and emotionally. Others warned her about losing more than money if she didn't protect herself soon. But inside, she was caught in a loop. Andre was still the father of her children. They had history. They had survived worse, hadn't they? Andre, reportedly, saw it differently. Not as support, but as sabotage. He allegedly accused Elizabeth of siding with people who had always wanted him out. That paranoia, real or not, seeded even more isolation. The couple started talking less, arguing less, too. But not because they were healing, because there wasn't enough left to argue over. Distance replaced fire. Longtime viewers know this pattern. The family calls out behavior. Andre pushes back harder. Elizabeth softens the blow, hoping to balance truth and loyalty. Only this time, the balance isn't personal, it's financial. Emotional. Parental. There's a house involved, a toddler enrolled in preschool, a business that doesn't run on good intentions, and a future that, without income or cooperation, starts to shrink at terrifying speed. Behind closed doors, sources say the stress pressures have reached a new level. The kind where silence isn't peace, it's confusion. Both of them allegedly wondering what next steps look like, but too proud or too afraid to say them out loud. So instead, they keep performing. Short answers. Generic updates. Tactical kindness that doesn't come from warmth, but muscle memory. And when her family started asking about the kid's future, something broke that day. Say 2 insiders. Maybe her silence. Maybe his denial. They haven't filed anything. No separation papers. No custody drafts. Not even the usual Notes app statement posted in sterile font with comments turned off. But according to people close to the situation, Elizabeth and Andre are already living in the pre-divorce phase. It's just happening in spreadsheets, bank apps, and Dropbox folders. It's not about storming out anymore. It's about spreadsheets titled monthly split or joint agreements. It's not about asking if they'll stay. It's about deciding who gets what when they don't. Sources say these conversations didn't start emotionally. They started practically. Who covers what? Now that the TLC money's not guaranteed? If they don't film again, where's the fallback plan? Who gets the house if one moves out? How's co-parenting going to work if their communication keeps shrinking into one-word texts and calendar reminders? This is the slow part of a breakup. The part nobody glamorizes. Where bitterness burns out and gives way to blunt strategy. When you don't understand me, turns into see the attached document. And that's the real red flag. Not a fight on camera. Not a dramatic social media unfollow. But sitting across from someone and realizing your to-do list has taken the place of your love language. One person close to the couple described it like this. They're not speaking to solve anything anymore. They speak to confirm logistics. It's a phase that often comes after the big blow-ups. Once both people are too tired to restart the fire, but too scared to stop moving. Especially when there's a kid involved. Especially when the cameras are off, and nobody's prompting apologies or pushing for emotional closures that make it into the final edit. This version of Elizabeth and Andre looks nothing like the one we met years ago. Remember those early seasons? Back when they couldn't keep their hands, or their tempers, off each other for more than a minute? There was mess, sure. But there was passion. Energy. At least it felt like both people still wanted something out of it. Now, it's different. He's reportedly quieter, disconnected, less defensive, not because he's more understanding, but because he's checked out. And she, according to insiders, is also quieter, but in a way that reads as protective. Protective of her child, of the little control she has left, of her exit route. You'd think the calm was a step forward. Friends did, at first, until they realized the energy had shifted from fixing to finishing. There's a certain kind of silence between people who've moved from let's work on this to let's survive it until it ends. That's where they allegedly are now. Professionals involved. Financial advisors, not marriage counselors. Legal friends consulted, though nothing filed. Yet. And avoidance? That's become a third character in the room. According to those who've been around them recently, topics like the future are danced around or deferred. Humdrum things like school pickups and errands get prioritized instead. Not because they matter more, but because they take less emotional risk. And what's tragic is that this emotional ghosting doesn't even come from hate. It comes from fear. People often assume the loudest moments mark the real breaking points. But sometimes, it's the wordless ones. The look past each other on the couch. The way neither notices the other's plate when untouched. Or the way you start picking up your phone in silence rather than sitting through the discomfort of what you're not saying. Those moments add up faster than any one fight. In many couples, they're the final stretch before someone says out loud what both parties already know. Sources say Elizabeth has quietly started framing her future in solo language. Career options that don't reference we. Plans for next year that don't include our show. Travel she's curious about with her daughter. Even when they're in the same room, she's apparently been described as absent. Not unsafe, not cold, just somewhere else entirely. Andre, on the other hand, allegedly hasn't handled that shift well. Not with anger. That would be normal for a guy like him. But with fear. With panic. That's what shocked people around him. One insider said, he's not raising his voice anymore. He's just fading. And when he talks about her, it sounds like a guy who's scared the ride's really over. This wasn't the script he expected. Andre was supposed to land a long-term role. Husband, father, provider, star. TLC brought visibility. He built a public profile. But behind that strength was a deep dependency on the familiar. And if Elizabeth is pulling away emotionally, professionally, maybe legally, then his identity starts to scatter too. That's not something ego handles gracefully. They still haven't said the one word fans are waiting for. Divorce. But insiders say it's not about hesitation. It's about damage control, timing, stability for their child. The longer they stay technically intact, the easier it is to protect certain assets, manage PR, and keep things from spiraling online. But the emotional contract, that may have already expired. And suddenly, Andre allegedly started showing signs of panic, not rage. That terrified some of their friends more than any argument ever had. It didn't end with a fight. It ended with a fade. No dramatic exit, no special episode, no official farewell from the stage they helped build. According to insiders, Elizabeth didn't get pushed off TLC. She quietly stepped back. No big announcement, no tell-all, just an intentional stillness that felt louder than chaos. Little by little, the phone calls stopped. The production check-ins became fewer. She reportedly declined to commit to new storylines, and then one day, she politely said nothing and never came back. For years, Elizabeth and Andre were reliable fuel for the franchise. Messy, loyal, unpredictable, but stable enough to keep coming back. That rare combo of volatility and longevity. TLC built entire arcs around their dynamic. Family clashes, baby planning, business tension. They weren't always the most likable, but they were consistent content. So when producers noticed hesitation, it wasn't brushed off. It was flagged. Insiders say Elizabeth started drawing lines she had never drawn before. She didn't want to film certain conversations. She reportedly pushed back against scenes producers believed were critical for story. Andre's frustrations allegedly escalated behind the scenes as he clashed with editors. Not in the usual that's a bad shot way, more strategic. He allegedly questioned entire character portrayals. Scenes that made him look rigid, controlling. Classic Andre edits he now reportedly saw as more damaging than ever. By that point, the tension between their real marriage and their TV marriage became the story no one could fix in post. And when that happens, producers have two options: force scenes to happen or start detaching quietly. According to sources, they chose the second. TLC didn't boot anyone out, but they stopped chasing them. New priorities emerged, new couples with flashier problems. Younger love triangles. People willing to bleed for ratings. Elizabeth wasn't one of them anymore. She allegedly wanted privacy, but not the controlled kind. She wanted peace. And Andre? While he likely wished for one more round in the limelight, the storm brewing inside their home wasn't something any production team could light properly. The stakes for TLC were higher than they appeared. Internal buzz suggested fear, not just about losing Elizabeth and Andre, but about what their quiet falling out represented. See, scripted drama is easy to sell. But when the breakdown becomes real, when love and money and mental pressure combine behind the eyes of two people playing themselves, it changes the franchise risk profile. Because it reminds everyone else on the cast, this isn't just performance. Fame is a credit card with interest. There's a reason insiders say the show began pivoting focus. Bring in fresh couples, more malleable narratives, safer bets. The Elizabeth-Andre situation didn't have sparkle anymore. It had dread. And dread doesn't make good ratings unless someone's willing to explode on screen. But they weren't. Elizabeth allegedly made a firm decision not to weaponize her pain for public consumption. Not this time. What Elizabeth figured out, and what so many reality veterans discover too late, is that when your brand becomes more important than your boundary, something always snaps. The viewers may want resolution. The producers may want conflict. But your child, your safety, your sanity deserves something else. And once you wake up to that truth, it's hard to pretend for the cameras again. One producer reportedly said she was never hostile. Just done. Done explaining. Done trying to pivot the scene into something usable. And those moments started showing up more during her final tapings. Quiet refusals. Conversations left unfinished. A noticeable emptiness in the script, like entire connective tissue was missing. Audiences didn't know the scenes were being gutted in edit. But something felt strange. Disconnected. Sanitized to the point of apathy. And that's how they left the franchise, not with a bang, but with deliberate erasure. No spin-offs teased, no cliffhangers promised, comments left to die in silence. Castmates allegedly told to prepare for a future without them. Because sometimes the biggest scandal isn't the fight, it's the way people suddenly disappear from a platform they bled on for years. Now, without a camera crew lighting their arguments, Elizabeth and Andre's story doesn't end, it drifts. It becomes whatever private truth they're writing now. And TLC, always hungry but not careless, reportedly took notes. Because if one of their most reliable pairs could go dark, walk away, and never market their collapse, then other cast members might start realizing they could too. That's the secret fear in reality TV. If too many people stop needing the brand starts needing new people. And new people don't always bring in old numbers. The cost of permanent conflict gets heavier when there's nothing left to distract you from the actual toll. And one final production meeting was, according to insiders, the moment Elizabeth decided what she would never do on camera again. No camera crews, no confessional prompts, no slap-cut edits designed to make conversations feel more resolved than they really are. That's where Elizabeth and Andre are now. If they show up in public, they're just two people with matching pasts, not matching storylines. There's no lighting crew to fix the mood, no editors to add tension to flat words, and more importantly, there's no paycheck coming in for staying together. No sweet TLC spin-off cash rewarding them for presenting a united front. That part of the deal ended the day they stopped being entertaining. Gone are the interludes of fame that once gave them rhythm and reason. No reunion specials teasing closure. No new season to sidestep real life. And that's the part a lot of viewers don't consider. When the show ends, the chaos doesn't. The problems just lose their platform. The arguments keep happening, but no one's getting paid to package them. Insiders say Elizabeth has started focusing on rebuilding something that's never been exclusively tied to TV. Not another influencer rebrand. Something quieter, more grounded. She's reportedly been exploring career paths that don't depend on a camera showing up, somewhere she can show up whole, and not sliced into digestible wife, mother, villain, or victim cuts. Whether it's business consultation, private content planning, or local projects, She's allegedly moving with more caution, but more clarity than ever before. Andre, on the other hand, is reportedly lost. Not in a dramatic, yelling in the street kind of way, but emotionally disoriented. Friends say the routine changes have rattled him. The drop in attention. The silence in his inbox. The lack of noise, of relevance. For someone who once saw fame not just as income, but identity, that kind of disappearance cuts deep. And it's not just about ego, it's about foundation. For years, being filmed gave him structure. Conversations had purpose. Choices had audiences. Now, there's no audience, only accountability. That's what's terrifying about the life after reality TV. You don't lose fame instantly, it fades in a way that's just fast enough to hurt and slow enough to keep checking your phone. The brand deals go from DMs to dead air. The followers stop engaging. The urgency disappears. And what's left is you, standing awkwardly in a kitchen that once felt like a set, trying to decide if you can afford to keep filming your life, even when no one's watching. Off-screen, the social media energy confirms it all. Elizabeth's posts are still filtered, still curated, but noticeably neutral. Vacations shown with ocean views, not companions. Moments with her child, but never any partner shadows in the background. Andre's feed feels quieter too. No new projects teased. No aggressive videos debunking rumors. Just the occasional still photo or comment designed to look like control, but reading more like avoidance. There's no clear update. No confirmation. But the silence is the statement. That's often the final act in stories like these. Not a final episode, but a gentle abandonment of stage presence altogether. And to those who've been rooting for them all this time, it's sobering, because no matter which side of their chaos you rooted for, everyone thought they'd make it longer than this. But this was never about who won the fight. It was about who stayed standing after the war. And right now, it looks like both of them are still piecing themselves back together in private. Without scripts, without sponsors, and without any promise that there's a comeback waiting on the other side. The emotional cost of performing stability for an audience of millions isn't just burnout, it's erosion. They spent years learning how to look like everything was fine. They got good at it. Too good. So good that by the time they actually broke apart, nothing looked different on the outside. That's the power and the poison of reality TV. You rehearse being yourself so many times, you stop noticing when the real you leaves the room. And that's where we are now. With millions of followers, still refreshing, still hoping, still speculating. But behind those screens, two people are trying to figure out if the life they curated can function at all when nobody's filming. And if it can't, who will they be beyond the roles they never meant to keep playing this long? And if you thought the $1 million loss was dramatic, wait until you hear which other couple insiders are now comparing their downfall to